Hi, I'm Andre Yee. I'm the host of the Modern Prospecting Podcast. And on today's episode, we have Melissa Madian. Melissa is the OG of revenue enablement. She headed up global sales enablement at Eloqua, where we both worked. By the way, a great company with great people. But she's gone on to make her mark as a revenue enablement guru. Melissa, welcome to the Modern Prospecting Podcast. Tell us what you're doing these days.
Thanks, Andre. It's so great to be here. The best way I can describe it is companies use me when they are looking to improve or optimize or fix their revenue engine. So anything to do with process tools, um, go-to-market strategy, anything that falls in the revenue enablement bucket, I am your girl.
Yeah. And you have your own consulting firm?
I do, yes.
Yeah.
It's CMM Enablement Services for all your revenue enablement needs.
That's great. That's great. Well, we are going to jump into all things prospecting, but before we do that, let's talk about what you're known for, sales or revenue enablement. What is revenue enablement? Why is it important? And I'm kind of curious, at what point did you say, hey, I really want to shape my career around this particular discipline?
Yeah, that's a funny story. So I'll sort of work backwards in your question. How I fell into enablement was essentially at Eloqua. I was running the sales engineering team, and the sales organization was struggling with competitive products. Lots of competitors out there saying that they could do everything Eloqua does, but cheaper, faster, easier to use. And I was offended by that because Eloqua was an amazing platform, as
We
you know.
we were
And
all very passionate. We got easily offended.
yeah, so I was like, well, no, that's crazy.
Yeah.
You're just not selling it right. You're not positioning
Yeah.
it properly. So I sort of took it upon myself to go, you know what? I'm going to help these clowns sell this product the way it should be sold. And that's kind of how I fell into enablement, and my career sort of built from there. So what enablement is, to go to the first part of your question, is providing process, tools, training for the revenue facing functions to close more business faster while also creating an amazing customer experience that hopefully builds customers for life. So if you think about the full customer life
Yeah.
cycle, it's enablement at all those stages, creating new customers, keeping those customers, growing those customers.
And including the prospecting, I would presume, the front
Absolutely.
part of that. Well, that's
Absolutely.
great because we're here to talk about prospecting. And
Yay.
I think, here's how I think about prospecting. I think prospecting, outbound prospecting, is the most difficult part of B2B selling today. It's the most volatile, meaning I think it's changed the most in the last 5 years. I think it'll change the most in the next 5 years. And so you've worked with a lot of sales organizations. I mean, you've done this for a while. From your perspective, as you take a look back from the days of Eloqua till today, like how has prospecting changed?
Yeah. Prospecting sucks. Like it really does, especially if you're a seller. A good chunk of your time is spent prospecting, is trying to build your book of business. I mean, I started my career in sales as basically an SDR, someone that
Yeah.
is looks at a territory for the rep and tries to just go in there and figure out, okay, what's the best strategy to shake these bushes and have birds fall out so I can capture them. Like that's it's a tedious, time consuming process back when I was an SDR. Now how prospecting's changed is there's a lot more automation and the use of AI that allows you to at least streamline your prospecting. But the fundamental purpose of prospecting hasn't really changed much. Like the whole point is to open your book of business and figure out who best to pursue in order to close business.
It kind of feels like, we've spent the last 10 to 15 years with a particular playbook. When I started Tiga, I talked to a lot of go-to-market leaders, and one of the things that struck me was how dissatisfied, I guess, is the best way to say it, how dissatisfied a lot of the go-to-market leaders were about the approach that we've taken to prospecting. And kind of feels like we've taken this one approach for the last 10 to 15 years, which typically involves hire a big SDR team, use these automated sales engagement tools, generate thousands and thousands of emails, thousands of calls daily, and kind of spray and pray, and there is sort of this feeling like it doesn't work anymore, or it isn't definitely not working the way it used to. Do you share that view, and what do you think, are you seeing that with your clients?
Yeah, I would agree that the playbook has basically stayed the same, like you said, for the last 10 to 15 years or so. Nothing's really changed. But and I'm seeing that across the board. Like folks just, I mean, we're human. We get into our comfort zones. Like this is the way we've always done it. So we'll just keep doing it this way because it's not broken, but is it the best way to do prospecting? Probably not. So I think the playbook needs to evolve with how buyers buy, how companies should sell, and technology. Like technology exists now. So what happened or how we did prospecting 10 to 15 years ago, technology changed. So you got to keep up with that change, I think.
When you say change, we need to change because, and sort of match to how buyers buy, and, setting tools aside for a second, what needs to change about prospecting? If I was standing up an SDR team today, like what should I be thinking about that maybe I wasn't thinking about, 3 or 4 or 5 years ago?
Yeah. So the spray and pray doesn't work really. I've been an executive buyer and I've received, countless cold calls, cold email. I still do. I'm a consultant now and I'm still getting emails, which just tells you that, the data isn't necessarily as good as you think it is, or they're not really taking a look at, okay, who are we reaching with this message? And are we actually reaching the right people with the right message? So the first thing you need to think about is, okay, to whom are we selling? Like, who is our target audience? And are we giving them the right message in the right mode that they operate in? And are we making the message about them? A lot of prospecting is, here's my great product, here's my great product, here's my great product, here's how awesome my product is, here's how amazing and all the great benefits you could get. But you're not the only person out there saying that. Thousands, hundreds of other vendors are saying the exact same thing. Here's my amazing product. And to the buyer, it's just noise. It's like, I literally don't even read them anymore. Unless it's a really catchy subject line, I generally just delete it. I don't even pay attention to it anymore. Just noise. So you need to reach the buyer with the right message that they're going to pay attention to. That isn't about
obviously start with the right person, like who are you targeting, and then what's the right message. Kind of curious, we'll talk about tools a little later, but you've done a fair amount of work. I think it's on your bio. Like you've done work with corporate visions, and you've done a lot of work with storytelling in sales. What's the role of storytelling specifically for prospecting, and why is it important? That kind of thing.
Yeah. So my husband's a screenwriter, and we both consume a ridiculous amount of movies and TV shows and content. Like we have all the streamers. We spend a ridiculous amount on these things. Like it's really insane, but it's part of his job, so he needs to. And I'm along for the ride.
So he puts it under research. Is that what it is? Research for his job.
And I'm just along for the ride. So I'm always thinking about what makes a good story and why do stories matter, and why do stories resonate with audiences. And as you mentioned, like I've actually been a Corporate Visions customer multiple times. Eloqua was a Corporate Visions customer.
We were, yes.
Yeah. So when I went out on my own to do consulting, it made sense to facilitate on their behalf. Like, and I do a lot of facilitation work. And one of the reasons why I love their material so much is they do focus in on this is about the buyer, and it's the story about the buyer. It's not about you. And to me, that really resonates because it's just like screenwriting. In screenwriting, you've got a protagonist, you have a hero, a heroine, and you follow that protagonist through some sort of transformation from current state to future state, and then they sort of live at the end. Not all movies, but presumably they'll live happily ever after. And why wouldn't you center your story on the buyer and make them the protagonist? And your product is there to help them be the hero, not
Yeah.
swoop in to save the day. And I think like storytelling gets thrown around a lot, but really the fundamental, the basis of storytelling is who is this story about, and
Mm.
and
Good.
how do they go from their current state through this transformation into a future state, leveraging the product or the service you're trying to position.
So the first sort of fundamental, mindset that we have to have is the customer is the hero, right?
Yeah.
They're the ones, they're the center stage.
Yeah, it's
I,
not
I
about
get
you.
I'm sorry, what?
It's not about you.
It's not about you.
Clients, I
That's the
tell
first thing
clients all the time, nobody cares about you. Nobody cares about you. It's all
And how
about
do they take it when you say that?
it's usually it's like I'm like, it's
Yeah.
true. Nobody cares.
Yeah,
Nobody cares
it's
about
true.
you. Like a
Yeah,
bad if the person shows
it just shows how self-centered we all are, right? We can't wait to get into like, here's our product, let me show you a demo, here's, but it's not about us. It's really about the customer. It's really about the person we're trying to serve, I love that. And I kind of subscribe to that in concept, and I really do agree with it. And at my last company, Trivia, we implemented that as sort of our actually brand positioning. But I do have this question because I get that conceptually, but how do you apply it to prospecting? Because with prospecting, you get an email, you get a subject line, you have an email, you have the challenge. If you are on the phone, you get them on the phone, you have 30 seconds. Like, how much storytelling? I mean, just to just to push back a little bit, or maybe to just dig deeper. How do you do that in 30 seconds? How do you do that in a subject line? How do you do that in an email that the person may or may not open?
Yeah.
I think that's the part that I would struggle with as we apply sort of like storytelling to prospecting.
Yeah, absolutely. If it were easy, everyone would be doing it and doing
Right.
it really well, right? The best way I can describe it is through an example. So I have a cat. My cat's name is Pickle, and Pickle and my husband and I, like the world revolves around this cat. We do not have children. This cat is our boy, and he's microchipped. Even though he's an indoor cat, he's microchipped, which is a little chip that goes underneath the pet
You
skin.
can't be too careful.
Yeah, it's exactly. You never know. You could get out.
Right, exactly.
So the company that I have registered this microchip under sends me prospecting emails. And I open every single one, not just because Pickle's important, because their subject line are usually so good at hooking me in that I pay attention because it's about what I care about. And so one example, what they were trying to position was a lifetime membership insurance, some sort of like they were trying to upsell me on something. And the subject line, all the subject line said was, if Pickle goes missing, can 24 Pet Watch find him? And when I read that on my phone, and I just like my heart leapt into my throat because like, like that's important to me. And I'm like, again, like I would go full John Wick for this cat. Like I would burn this city to the ground for this cat.
God forbid anyone takes the cat.
I know, like it's the but see what they did, and again, this was a mass email, so this was probably somebody's marketing cadence or sales loft cadence or something like that. But what they did really well was they knew this is what's important to this set of target buyers. This is their profile. This is what's important to them. What's important, and they made the point of doing personalization too, which I'm sure was all automated. But they made the point of making it about what I cared about.
Mm.
and using their data, their technology, whatever they use to make sure that
To
the
enable
story,
that.
yeah, to really focus it on what I care about, what's important to me. And that's a really simple way to, and then the actual email, because I opened it, unfolded like a story and basically centered on me as the pet owner and Pickle as my boy and how this would all affect him. And I actually considered buying it, but then my husband was like, "This is crazy. We're not spending this money on this."
you- you're not signing up for a lifetime
Yeah,
thing.
you're not gonna have
Yeah,
problem.
it's yeah. I think you're right. When you use that example, first of all, thanks for that example. It's actually um, a great example of how tailoring it to what the prospective buyer cares about is so important. And you're also right. If it was easy, everyone would do it. And
Yeah.
I think your example is it's actually possible to do that in a
Mhm.
subject line,
Yeah.
unpack it in the email, right? So the subject line actually isn't, the thing that gets me a lot, part of what gets me nowadays is because AI is enabling so much. A lot of people can do personalization, but they tend to be very gimmicky, like
Yeah.
gimmicky sort of subject lines, gimmicky sort of hooks to try to get your attention. Like, oh, you're in downtown Toronto, and I try to like say reference a deli there or something
Yeah.
like that, just to get that. To me is very gimmicky. I think what you're pointing out here is really really important, which is don't focus on the give, on the what you can do with the tool, but really work on how can you capture the essence of what the target buyer cares about, and being able to do that in the subject line is definitely difficult.
Oh yeah.
And like you said, if it was easy, everyone would do it, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. That's a great example. Any other thoughts with regard to like sort of storytelling, um, you know, um, and the applicability of that in not just email, but even on the phone or other settings.
Yeah. It's just make it about the buyer. It has to be from the perspective of the buyer, because what the buyer's thinking is like, what, so what's this got to do with me? Like, so what? Why should I care? How does your thing fit into my world? The more you can, it's context. That's probably the best way I can describe it. Your product or
Mm,
service or whatever it is you're trying to position when you're prospecting, when you put it into context for the buyer, that's what starts to center the buyer on what it is that you're offering. And that's really all storytelling is. It's just putting things into context from the perspective of the protagonist. Like the protagonist
yeah,
is going through some stuff, they have to go through a transformation, they live happily ever after. That's kind of the
yeah.
story, and it's all from their perspective, from in context of their world. That's really all storytelling is.
I presume one of the things that's implied is that not only if I start doing that in prospecting, then when I have the meeting, I need to keep that thread in mind, right?
Yeah,
Whatever it is, it's important
yeah,
when I actually am presenting to them. When I, that's what's, you want to keep that sort of storytelling thread and
yeah.
pull on the same thread through the sales process.
Absolutely. I mean, that's it used to drive me nuts when sales reps would come to me and say like, show the harbor tour of Eloqua, like show them all the things. And it's
Mm,
like if I show them all the things, then they're just going to go, oh, this is too overwhelming. Like there's too many things here. Let's just focus on the things they care about, the things that actually are going to make an impact in their world, the things that will make them look like a hero. And that's hard. It's
yeah,
hard for a lot of
yeah.
people.
Yeah. Okay, let's shift the discussion a little more to tools, AI, that kind of thing. Obviously, there are a lot of AI tools out there. Tiga is one of them, and you've been, an advisor to us on this journey. We really appreciate that. AI is making a huge impact on sales, right? And there are different tools doing different things. There are tools out there with sales coaching. We focus on helping you with, as I said, the most volatile, difficult part of
Mhm.
sales, in our opinion, is prospecting. That's the part that Tiga is particularly focused on. But one thing that I'm really curious about is sort of like the impact of AI in in a sales organization, particularly on the role of the SDR.
Mm.
I know from previous discussions I've had with you, you have some provocative thoughts about this. So just, riff a little bit on how you think AI is impacting the role of the SDRs. Will we have more SDRs? Will we have fewer SDRs? Will we even need SDRs in the future? Go.
My hot take, this is gonna be a hot take. My hot take
Yes.
is I think organizations don't necessarily need an SDR team. Or if that's too much, you need a much smaller SDR team. Because I always look at like what's the point of the SDR team? In a lot of organizations, I think because again, we get stuck in the way we always do things. They just think, oh, I have to stand up an SDR team to support my sales
Right.
reps. Well, do you like why are you standing up this SDR team? Are you just doing it to try and get like the spray and pray? Are you doing it just to try and get them to book appointments? Like I go back to when I was a sales rep for the first time back a long time ago where there was no technology. So I had to do all the work. I had to do my own prospecting. I had to do the research. I had to learn
Right.
who my target. I had to do all those things, and I didn't have something like an AI to assist me. Now, then, like sort of SDRs came into play, but now we have AI. So now all the things that the SDR would have been doing, AI can pretty much solve for. Like Tiga's a great example of that. Like you can do all that stuff really quickly as a rep. And then you think about, okay, what I hear a lot from clients is my SDRs need to be upskilled because they're, these young kids having conversations with C-level people that are well tenured in their career. And there's just a mismatch of conversation going on. So now you've set the wrong precedent with your target buyer. And then also your SDR feels like I got to get out of here as quickly as possible because I need to be a quota bearing person. So that way I can have better conversations with my buyers. So you eliminate all that by using AI, and maybe you make the SDRs just inside sellers. Like you hire them to just run small transactional business from start to finish. They run full cycle deals. They just do like the really small ones. So
you said so much there, but essentially, I think that you're saying, if I were to read between the lines, you're basically saying, in the future, you don't think we need SDRs as the technology improves. Right? And you're saying basically, instead of SDRs, maybe make them inside sales reps, actually, which used to be the case. Actually, that was the pathway to being an AE was you start as an inside sales rep. But they actually have to, they have a quota that they have to close on, and they're essentially prospecting and closing these smaller deals. That's how you see the sales organizations evolve, you think?
Yeah, evolving kind of back to the way it was.
The way it used to be, yeah.
But with the addition of now you have technology and AI and things that can actually assist the process. And maybe the SDRs don't go away completely, but maybe they assist in using some of the technology and helping build a book of business. So they become almost more marketing-y versus salesy. So they wouldn't like a lot of things. So I think generally if like getting rid of them all together is too disruptive, maybe it's just they evolve into a slightly different role.
I think the evolution has to take place personally. Like I'm not sure I think that, even though, obviously I'm building a tool to make sellers more effective and we're used by a lot of full cycle sellers, but I'm not sure that that SDRs will completely go away. But I'll say this part, I am pretty sure that we'll need a lot fewer of them, and they're going to be upskilled. In fact, I think the skill sets are going to be radically transformed. I think to the point you were just making, I think you're going to see that they are really part marketer, part seller. And there's a lot of, they'll have some, they'll have to be adept with these AI tools yet know how to put campaigns together and be creative and as well as sell. So, you're essentially saying you see decrease in SDRs, maybe up to eventually to zero, and then sort of the move towards full cycle selling teams
Yeah.
where you have to prospect, you have to,
Yeah.
is that, are you seeing that in your clients today, or are you
I'm
seeing that
not.
expressed, from your clients, or are they struggling to know what to do?
I think it's more the latter. It's they're struggling to know what to do because the role of the SDR, as it is currently defined, the
Mm,
role of the SDR sucks
yeah,
because
it's true.
like they're marked or they're measured on number of calls or activity levels, and that's not, again, we just talked about how spray and pray doesn't work. So why are you making these poor kids like fresh out of college do all of these things? That it's one of the reasons why they want to get out of the role so quickly, I think, because it's a really
It,
sucky job. So
yeah.
instead modify their role so that it is more of this hybrid of a marketing and kind of a almost like an opsy type person, where they're actually looking at the rep's book of business and going, here's the best way to use these tools and to actually get the right story in front of the right buyer at the right
Mm.
time. And then here you go, rep, these are all the people you should go in and call. Go nuts.
Yeah, what you're saying is absolutely true. I know from personal experience that, first of all, talking to a lot of go-to-market leaders, but even when I was at Triblio,
Yeah.
our SDR team was actually pretty good, but it the role of the SDR in a lot of organizations, including our organization at Triblio, the role isn't something that people aspire to.
No,
It's
hate
a
it.
job no one really wants. It's a job that is the job you take on your way to something else, right? And that
Exactly.
and because of that, it's really difficult to sustain a really high performing SDR team, because the good ones will leave, the
They
bad
become
ones
reps.
stay around, you know, that kind of thing. And the good ones leave. They want to either, be an AE right away, and 6 months into a job, certainly a year into a job, they don't want to do this anymore. They want to make, in their perception, real money. And then the bad ones stay until you fire them. So it's really
Yeah.
hard to really create a high performing team. But I think what I think I'm curious about is, you're saying, hey, I see this move towards full cycle sellers. That's what I think makes sense.
Mhm.
But yet you work with a lot of clients, and you're saying none of them are actually actively moving to that model. And why is that? Is that because they have an existing team they don't know what to do with, or is that because they think they haven't mapped out a plan on how to transition? What do you think the barriers are to sort of moving
Yeah.
to this full cycle model?
Yeah, I think it's all of those things, and just this sort of status quo, right? This is the way we've always done it. You stand up an SDR team, they go, they're maybe 6 months to 9 months or a year in the role, they move up in the ranks, and that's the way it's always been done. So I quite often I will challenge my clients to say, why do you have this SDR team? Why does this team exist? What is its function? What is its purpose? What I also see across clients is the SDR team sits in different functions. Like I've
Mm,
seen it sit in sales, I've seen it sit in marketing, and nobody quite knows what to do with the SDR team. And this is and people just sort of throw up their hands and go, well, that's the way it's always been done.
right, right.
So it's a slow. There's a lot of inertia to overcome on this one, I think.
Yeah. You just touched on something that's been something that, I know have been kicked around quite a bit. Like, should they sit in marketing? Should they sit in sales? Do you have an opinion on that? Like, do you think it's better in marketing, it's better in sales, or?
I think um, for the role that we're talking about, that's a little bit more marketing-y opsy, it probably makes more sense for them to sit in sales, but maybe under ops kind of a thing, because they like a great SDR. My view of a great SDR is the one that takes a look at reps book of business, multiple reps book of business, goes, okay, they sit in this area. Let's do a data analysis of who's sitting in this patch, who are the target buyers or the target companies if you're an account-based model, what makes the most sense, what do these folks care about. Let's start to structure what the storyline will be. Here you go, rep. here's your next 6 months worth of work, go nuts. And
Yeah.
that's kind of a little bit marketing, a little bit opsy. So maybe ops makes the most sense because they would
Yeah.
be able
So
to,
under like RevOps,
yeah,
which typically sits under sales,
yeah,
like the sales function. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Cool. That makes sense. Okay. Coming down the home stretch here. I,
Woo.
before we wrap up, you've given us, this has been a really interesting conversation. You've given us some really great insights. But what's one or two practical tips or advice, pieces of advice that you can give? I know you touched on storytelling, but any other practical tips that you can give for sellers who prospect, whether they're an SDR or full cycle AE? Any last
Yeah.
words of wisdom?
I would say again, make it about the buyer. Like why should the buyer care about the product or the service that you're positioning? How does it fit contextually into their world? If you can just do that
Mm,
and center it
yeah.
on them and make it about them already, that is like way ahead of most of the vendors out there. Most of the emails I get, most of the cold calls that I'll hear, if you just make it about them and how your product or service fits into their world.
One other thing I wanted to ask you is, I know I said this was the last thing, but do you think it matters what channel we pick? I was just thinking as you were saying the advice, right? And I was thinking about the example with your cat, and you did open it. But
Yep.
one concern I have sometimes is that, for instance, like email. I often say to people, it's kind of like no matter how, let's say you wrote me a really nice note, handwritten sentiment in a like nice card. But if that particular week I get like 1,000 junk mail and
Yeah.
1,000 pieces, like just your thoughts on, besides the storytelling part, like
Yeah.
the channel itself, particularly email, particularly our inbox, seems to be so crowded. I mean, you know, your example with your cat, you did find it and you did open it, but sometimes I think it just gets drowned out in just sheer volume
Yeah.
of things that you don't pay attention to, right? So no matter how good your subject line is, or
Yeah.
it
Oh,
has
you
to
meant
be,
junk. There's a
yeah,
lot of stuff that just goes directly into my junk folder without me even
yeah.
seeing it.
So any thoughts on like, the like, should we not use email as much? Should we try other channels? That kind of thing, or
Yeah, channels is a tough one because I don't know that there's a really good answer to that question.
for B2B especially, there are
Yeah,
only a limited
I
number.
mean, email is still important. I still read emails. I've seen some discussion around does text or WhatsApp, that kind of thing, which
Mm,
I myself, if I get a random text message trying to sell me something, I like delete and block. I'm like, why are you texting me? Like this is no bueno.
yes.
I've
Stalker
seen like
vibes.
yeah, no, yeah, it's like so creepy. I've seen like Instagram direct messages and I've seen that kind of stuff too. And it's like, Instagram is like, to me, I view it more on a personal, like it's to like follow fashion and cat videos. Like it's if you're trying to sell me something on Instagram, I'm like, it's a little weird too. It's tough. Like it's almost, it's Vegas. You're sort of
Yeah.
spinning the roulette wheel and hoping that the channel that you hit them on is the one that's going to be the one that they care about or the one that they do want to consume content in. What I'd say is I would start with prospecting. I'd start with a multi-channel approach and
Mm,
see how prospects respond. And some of them may even tell you, don't do this. And then
yeah. Great. Great. Well, thank you. Thanks. Wise words of wisdom. Thanks, Melissa, really. And thanks for being such a fantastic guest, sharing your insights. If there are any listeners interested in learning more about your consulting services, where can they find you? I presume LinkedIn, but how do they get a hold of you?
Yep, you can either search for me on LinkedIn. On LinkedIn, I'm T Melissa Madian, or you can just go to my website at melissamadian.com.
Yeah, I know a while ago I asked you what the stood for, and you replied trouble.
That's right.
But all right. Thank you everyone for listening. We're
Yep.
gonna have more amazing guests. So if you'd like the content, please subscribe. We'll catch you on the next episode. Thanks.
Thanks, Andre.